Welcome back to a tour of the Grove, and we made it to the stage. Not now. So here we are. We have this intimate, cozy setting in the woods. We've already talked about the parking and concession and pavilion, but those things wouldn't exist without this. So how did this get here? How did the Grove become the Grove? Well, it all goes back to Fletch and Margaret. Fletch was an English professor at Mary Baldwin, and when the college's theater professor retired, he accepted that position on the condition they'd allow men in the productions. 5 of those men enjoyed it so much they wanted to keep doing plays over the summer. Fletch said, okay, find us a place. But it turned out that on a walk up the hill from their farm, Fletch and Margaret Collins found the place. So it's 1953. The Collins family, along with those 5 men and 6 Mary Baldwin students, dragged large river rocks from the field for the base, and each put in $25 for the concrete that made the first Grove stage. Incidentally, those 5 men plus Fletch became the first Grove board. Now, if you want to put up plays, you need an audience. So the group cleared trees for parking and then used those trees to create the first seating. Wooden planks on tree stumps. The audience area was flat, so the first lighting controls were simply on a board behind the audience. The actual lights at the Grove have always been in the trees. So the Grove is built, but if you build it, will they come? Well, take a look at the invitation that went out that first year. Fletch asked the phone company for several copies of the phone book, and the board sat down and marked names, and this invitation went out to everyone they thought might be interested in the new theater. 4 plays, 4 nights, $3. So in year 2 of the Grove, the seating area was raked to improve visibility, and you could rent a stadium seat for 25 cents so your wooden bench would have a back. Since the audience is now raised, the lighting booth has to go up. So A.W. Jeffries built the first treehouse. Current Grove president Terry Sotherington recalls you reached the booth by climbing an old metal ladder that was simply tied to the booth. And when sudden storms came, you faced the quandary of staying in the booth or climbing down the metal ladder. Also in year 2, a children's theater program started at the Grove, appropriately named the Acorns. So the Grove rolls merrily along, and in 1959 it's time for another audience facelift. This time, metal seats are installed. Some of those can still be seen, behind the gate, and 2 are reserved every show for Fletch and Margaret. In the early 60s, longtime Grovers Stan Stark and Tom Kay buried the cables that ran from the lights to the light booth. Tom says they spent many weekends and killed many beers in the process. Roughly 20 years later, Tom also rebuilt the lighting booth, modernizing it for efficiency and safety, and that's the booth in use today. So the original stage had strong sentimental value. It was there for the very first production of Blythe Spirit in 1954, and it conjures memories for many to this day, like the time they drove a sports car across the stage for 1976's Plain and Fancy, or when it was buried in a ton of sand for the 1977 production of The Tempest. But by the mid-'80s it was showing strain and had shifted so much it was no longer flat or level. And it was smaller. To extend the stage, you'd have to build a platform and then build legs to the unlevel ground below. So in 1988, Virginia Frame Builders built the Grove's first wooden stage. The first show that year was Noises Off, a show with a moving set that absolutely requires a level stage. In the first version of the script, I can't believe I forgot this. How many stages have a tree growing through them? When they built the 88 stage to be bigger, they incorporated this tree and gave it room to grow. With the new wooden stage, the Grove made frequent use of various trapdoors in productions like Pippin and The Foreigner. And if you ever saw a show at the Grove and wondered where the actors disappear to when the traps are used, this is where they go. Linda Petsky told us that she and Mac Swift had to operate a fog machine under here for Pippin, and that Mac created a cozy little place to hang out or nap between their cues. Yeah, I love Mac, but that's crazy. I'm coming out. In the late 90s, a permanent orchestra pit was added, and 2003 marked the Grove's 50th anniversary, and with that came the latest audience renovation, including new plastic seats and stone-faced retaining walls. For 26 years, this wooden stage played host to 130 Grove comedies, mysteries, musicals, and dramas. A wooden stage is better than cement not only for things like trapdoors, but also help when an actor needs to take a fall or crawl around on hands and knees. But being outdoor theater means things take a beating from Mother Nature. So in 2014, it was time for another new stage, this one built by board members and volunteers. What happened to the old stage? It still makes occasional appearances on sets, like in 2015's production of Don't Dress for Dinner. Now, it's worth noting that the Grove stage is more than a square of wood. Underneath can be used for storage, the rear steps are movable, the 4 corners can be used for entrances and exits, and the front wings can also be used for additional playing space. And though it hasn't been done in years, this wing can be lowered and turned into a ramp. 30 shows have played on the latest iteration, and only time and Mother Nature can tell when she'll need to be replaced. Playing on the Grove stage is unique for many reasons. Acting in the elements means you get to pretend it's cold when it's really not. and to pretend you're not cold when you really are. You get great at projecting your voice over tree frogs and wind because there are no microphones here. Your backstage, where you wait for your entrances and change clothes, is shared with leaves, bugs, and woodland creatures. Your audience is so close, you can hear when they say things like, "I think she's the murderer," and you love them for it. Your curtain is based on when the sun goes down. And again, Mother Nature.
If it rained, we went down and did plays in the living room at the farm, which was pretty much like Reader's Theater. You had time to turn, and that was it. You had no other space.
These days when it rains, the actors get wet before the audience due to the tree canopy. But when it rains hard enough, we head to the pavilion, where directors have already planned where entrances and exits will be. While everyone prefers the stage, the loyalty of an audience that stays on rain nights does not go unappreciated. Over 67 years, things change. The Grove season went from 4 shows running for 4 nights and evolved to today's 5 shows over 7 nights. Pennyroyal Farm used to host rehearsals and after-show parties filled with music and square dancing. There's even an old farm songbook full of tunes, some a bit bawdy, that everyone knew by heart.
Even the casts have changed. They used to be mostly Mary Baldwin students and local men, and many would live at the farm for the summer. In fact, the first open auditions weren't until 1975, and up until 1958, Fletch directed all the shows. But the basics never change.
Be all ready and get in place, and the bell would ring and the cows would come by and the bats would start flying around and the show would go on.
And the show does go on, even in a virtual season. Whether you're picnicking before the show or walking the path for your first or 50th performance. From the beginning, in this beautiful, intimate setting, the Oak Grove has always simply been playing in the woods.